Liberties Union model of making sure that we never offend terrorists, or is the model for us today to say to the CIA and others, do everything you can to protect America. We're going to cover your back. We are proud of you, and we want you to defend America.
Senator Durbin, the former vice president's daughter, Liz Cheney, said that President Obama has a September 10th mentality in his fight against terrorists.
Let me say, if you step back and take a look at history for a moment, you will find the message we just heard from Mr. Gingrich, from Vice President Cheney, and Mr. Rush Limbaugh to be the same. It's a message of fear. Be afraid. Be very afraid. And to say that this president is not doing everything in his power to keep America safe is just as irresponsible as anything I've ever heard said on your program. This president is dedicated to the safety of America. He has said clearly that he's not going to allow a single dangerous person to be released in the United States or be in a position to harm us. He's doing everything night and day to keep us safe. But let's look at what we have here. The president said in his speech he didn't question the motives of those like Vice President Cheney who thought they were keeping America safe. The fact is, in a way, it didn't work. Guantanamo became an inspiration for recruiting terrorists around the world. At the end of the day, it was President Bush in his second term who abandoned the Cheney approach, who said we're not going to use torture, we're going to close down Guantanamo because it isn't working to keep America safe. Now, I just want to tell you, when people like General Colin Powell step forward and say to us, put torture behind us and close Guantanamo, I believe they are on the right track. Here's a person who served our nation in the military and on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he believes we can keep America safe with a much better approach. And this notion somehow that President Obama is not keeping America safe has been rejected by the American people. They trust his leadership.
Let me just say, I think people should be afraid. I think the lesson of 1993, the first time they bombed the World Trade Center, was fear's probably appropriate. I think the lesson of Khobar Towers, where American servicemen were killed in Saudi Arabia, was fear's probably appropriate. I think the lesson of the 2 embassy bombings in East Africa was fear's probably appropriate. I think the lesson of the coal being bombed in Yemen was fear's probably appropriate. And I'll tell you, if you aren't a little bit afraid after 9/11 and 3,100 Americans killed inside the United States by an effort, if you weren't worried about the second wave attack that was designed to take out the biggest building in Los Angeles, right, I think that you are out of touch with reality.
But Speaker Gingrich, you make the point about how Vice President Cheney felt personally, personal fear. And isn't President Obama's argument that fear as a basis of national security policy is not sustainable over time? How do you come up with a sustainable legal framework, a sustainable national security policy? Don't we elect leaders to transcend fear for lasting policy?
Look, we sustained the Cold War against the Soviet Empire for 44 years because our national leadership came together and said to the country, there are sufficiently great dangers to America to sustain our power worldwide. I mean, we sustained against the Soviet Empire worldwide for 44 years. Now, that requires us to have I think the first level of debate is simple. How much should you worry about something truly terrible happening to America? I belong to the wing that believes we live in an age when very few people using very dangerous weapons can cause incalculable damage. And I think we should take very strong steps to make sure that doesn't happen.
Senator Durbin, let me ask you this. You've heard criticism from the right of President Obama. There's also criticism from the left. And that is, there is very little distinction between President Obama's approach to fighting terrorists and President Bush's approach. And there are numerous examples. Military commissions are still in place. Targeted killings are going on. The issue of state secrets. The detention of war criminals in a kind of middle ground who can't be released, who can't be tried. The president is also for that. Is there a difference between the two?
First, let me tell you that America cowering in fear is not going to be a strong nation. I disagree with Mr. Gingrich. We can understand the threat, we can deal with it rationally, we can be strong, and we will be safe with President Obama. But this notion that fear is going to guide us is what brought us to the notion of weapons of mass destruction and this war in Iraq and all that has cost us. You know, Vice President Cheney said the other day, without hesitation, I'd do everything all over again. He hasn't learned any lesson from history. Now, as far as President Obama's approach at the National Archives, he made it clear, and he was open to the American people. And this is what he said. There will be military commissions, but these are going to be commissions that are going to follow our constitutional values. We are going to basically say that we're not going to have hearsay that has to be rebutted by a defendant. We're going to allow for the right of counsel. We're going to have the basic approaches under the law that the Supreme Court is going to demand of us.
Do you see that correlation between President Bush's approach and President Obama?
I would say they both have military commissions, and we've had them back to the time of George Washington. But the approach of President Obama is one that is closer to our Constitution and our rule of law. And just consider this. In 7 years in Guantanamo, there were exactly 3 who were convicted by military commissions, and those were thrown out by the Supreme Court. President Obama has learned from that lesson of history. He's going to make sure that any military commission, military tribunal in the future is one that can be sustained by the courts.
Let me move on to the controversial issue of the House Speaker currently, and that's Nancy Pelosi, and the fact that she accused the CIA of misleading Congress with regard to briefings about the Bush administration's so-called enhanced interrogation techniques. Speaker Gingrich, you have said that Speaker Pelosi has disqualified herself from the office that she holds. And you wrote this week about what may be motivating her. Why would Speaker Pelosi, you wrote, escalate the small skirmish she found herself in over the 2002 briefing into a full-scale war with the CIA? Perhaps it's because if America knew that Speaker Pelosi consented, fully informed and without complaint, to waterboarding back in 2002, it would reveal the current liberal bloodlust over interrogations for what it is, the left's attempt to hunt down and purge its political opponents. If Pelosi believed that waterboarding was justified in 2002, then a policy of selectively using enhanced interrogation techniques in carefully circumscribed ways in order to prevent future attacks, in other words, the Bush administration policy, is vindicated. Senator Durbin, first to you. Do you think that policy is vindicated?
Well, I can just tell you this. When it comes to this attack on Speaker Pelosi, there are those on the right who will do everything they can to divert attention from the real issue of the threat of terrorism, the interrogation techniques that have been used in the past, and whether or not we can be stronger in the future.
Do you believe that Speaker Pelosi consented to those techniques?
No, I don't. I think if you look at the record, and here's what it is, she was briefed in September of 2002. She was told that some of these techniques, as I understand it, could be viewed as legal. She wasn't told, as Time magazine has reported, that waterboarding had already been used 83 times. All of those, Mr. Goss, Senator Graham, Senator Rockefeller, all the others who were involved in this don't agree with the conclusion that there was a complete and accurate briefing as to what had occurred up to that point when it came to waterboarding.
You speak often to this president. Is President Obama behind Nancy Pelosi?
I can tell you this. He said publicly that he supports Speaker Pelosi, and I do as well. She is a great leader. She is a person who is going to help the president bring us out of this economic crisis, deal with the issues of health care and energy that the American people really want us to focus on.
Are you concerned about the damage to morale at the CIA?
I can tell you that with Leon Panetta there, they have an excellent leader. It is a new day. He's going to stand up for approaches at that agency which will help keep America safe. And I think that most of those who work at the intelligence agencies realize we value them. They're important allies in our war on terror.
Speaker Gingrich, some on the left have said, for you to attack Speaker Pelosi this way is nothing but political payback.
Well, let me say, first of all, I agree with Leon Panetta. Leon Panetta, the day after her statement, sent a message to every employee of the CIA, said, we did brief accurately in 2002. We do report legally. It would be illegal to do what she said, and we do not break the law. He came back the following Monday and said, this kind of political attack on the CIA, he didn't name her by name, obviously, but he said these kind of political attacks on the CIA are damaging to morale, and politicians should remember we are fighting 2 active wars and have a worldwide terrorist threat we're engaged with. Now, I just think that that's a pretty firm statement of what was wrong with her press conference. I think all she's got to do is go to the floor of the House and apologize. She ought to say she exaggerated. What she said was not true about the CIA. And again, there are 2 different fights here. What she did or didn't learn in 2002, a House ethics investigation can determine. The question of what she said about the CIA that Thursday is flatly false and dishonest, and she ought to apologize to the country on the floor of the House and to the CIA for having said it.
But it's because she was critical of the CIA?
Mr. Gregory?
No, because she said flatly they lie all the time to the Congress, which is A, illegal, B, not true, and C, just a reminder, I mean, if you want people to risk their lives to defend America, it would be nice to occasionally support them rather than smear them.
Senator?
I would just say that I'm afraid Mr. Gingrich is suffering from a little political amnesia here. He's forgotten that in year 2007, that he criticized the national intelligence estimate relative to the capability of Iran to develop nuclear weapons, and said that, if I remember the quote correctly, I'm looking down here, that what they did damaged our national security and misled the American people. Mr. Gingrich, would you like to make an apology to our intelligence agencies for what you said in 2007?
I said that particular report was intellectually dishonest. It was a public, non-classified report, and we were debating it. I said it was intellectually dishonest.
Do you apologize?
I've never said the CIA lied to the Congress, which would be illegal, be a felony.
Well, what do you say about Republican Congressman Hoekstra, who did in fact say that the intelligence community had lied and misled the American people when it came to the killing of an individual in Peru? Should he apologize? Chairman
Hoekstra, as he was at the time, was engaged in a specific incident. The Inspector General of the CIA actually did the right job. The investigative board of the CIA did the right job. It was a specific case. They reported that it was wrong, and the CIA actually insisted on telling Congress the truth. And if you check with Chairman Hoekstra, he'll tell you he agrees with me on this particular issue.
I just have a couple of minutes left, and I want to get to a couple of more topics. One is the Supreme Court and the vacancy that will be filled by President Obama. Senator Durbin, when? Will it come this week?
I think it is going to come this week.
You think as early as Tuesday?
Well, I've been told it's likely to come this week, but I don't know which day.
I spoke to a White House official this week who said it'll be clear what the president wants to accomplish when you see the nominee. Can you interpret that? What is it that the president wants to accomplish with this first nomination?
I think the president's made it clear. Understand, this is a man who spent his life studying the law and the Constitution and teaching it. He understands it. I would hate to go through that interview on constitutional issues with our president, because he knows a lot more about the Constitution than many people who serve as judges today. And I think he's going to look for a person who understands the law, someone of high integrity, and as he said, someone who's in touch with the real world in terms of the real impact of constitutional
And I want to
decisions.
pick up on that point, because Speaker Gingrich, one of the things that then Senator Obama said in 2005 when he was opposing the nomination of John Roberts as Chief Justice, that when it comes to the 5% of difficult cases, he says in those difficult cases, the critical ingredient is supplied by what is in the judge's heart. Does that trouble you?
It doesn't trouble me, but I think this decision will be the test of his Notre Dame speech. He said at Notre Dame we should come together. He said we should try to find common ground. Is he in fact going to nominate a moderate this week? Or is he going to nominate somebody who, in their judgments and in their rulings, has proven to be radical? I think this will be one of the most important definitional moments of this administration, and we'll find out whether he meant the Notre Dame speech or whether it was just a nice speech on the way to a very radical administration. I don't know yet. I'm looking forward to seeing who he nominates, and I think it will tell us a great deal about this president and about this administration's future.
Let me ask you about the future of the Republican Party and the ongoing debate about who's the leader of the party. Vice President Cheney said when it came to Colin Powell, he didn't even consider him a Republican any longer. Well, Secretary Powell, General Powell, responded this week. He said this, Rush Limbaugh says effectively to me, get out of the Republican Party. Dick Cheney says he's already out. I may be out of their version of the Republican Party, but there's another version of the Republican Party waiting to emerge once again. Do you think Colin Powell is part of that Republican Party?
Absolutely.
You think Dick Cheney was wrong?
Yeah, I don't want to pick a fight with Dick Cheney, but I think the fact is the Republican Party has to be a broad party that appeals across the country and that does so. I mean, we have the governor of Vermont. We have the governor of Rhode Island. These are not states that are traditional southern right-wing states. To be a national party, you have to have a big enough tent that you inevitably have fights inside the tent. Ronald Reagan understood that, and Reagan always used to say, as you know, my wife Cliss and I did recently a movie on Reagan, and Reagan always used to say, my fellow Republicans and those independents and Democrats who are looking for a better future, he consciously wanted the broadest possible coalition. That's how he carried 49 states in 1984. I think Republicans are going to be very foolish if they run around deciding that you're going to see how much they can purge us down to the smallest possible base.
When you were last here, I asked you if you were considering a run in 2012. You said probably not. Are you thinking that through a little bit differently now?
I'll be glad to accept an invitation in early 2011 to have that conversation. But
so you're thinking about it?
I'm not going to think about it till 2011.
All right, we're going to save the date. Speaker Gingrich, thank you very much. Senator Durbin, thank you as well.
Thank you, too.
And coming next, a look inside the Obama-Cheney debate from this past week and a look ahead at the issues that will top the political conversation in the coming weeks. A Supreme Court nominee, health care reform, the economy and energy. Insights and analysis from our political roundtable. Rich Lowry, Michelle Norris, Gene Robinson and Chuck Todd, only on Meet the Press.
UBS.
Our roundtable weighs in on the Obama-Cheney debate and the issues topping the president's agenda after this brief commercial break.
She wants to make up. We decided to turn in early.
We just know.
Finding the moment that's right for you both can take some time. That's why Cialis gives men with erectile dysfunction options. 36-hour Cialis or Cialis for daily use. Cialis for daily use is a clinically proven low-dose tablet you take every day, so you can be ready anytime the moment is right.
Tell your doctor about your medical condition and all medications, and ask if you're healthy enough for sexual activity. Don't take Cialis if you take nitrates for chest pain, as this may cause an unsafe drop in blood pressure. Don't drink alcohol in excess with Cialis. Side effects may include headache, upset stomach, delayed backache, or muscle ache. To avoid long-term injury, seek immediate medical help for an erection lasting more than 4 hours. If you have any sudden decrease or loss in hearing or vision, stop taking Cialis and call your doctor right away.
Cialis for daily use or 36-hour Cialis. Ask your doctor if Cialis is right for you, so when the moment is right, you can be ready.
Emily, fill in the blank. In this economy, it's everybody's business to what?
Okay. It's everybody's business to do even more with less. Less is the new more, right?
Of course.
This country definitely needs to focus on other ways to get energy.
We should be looking closer to home.
There are places off the continental shelf.
Natural gas can be a part of the solution.
I think we need to work on wind resources.
They ought to be carefully mapping every conceivable alternative.
There is an endless opportunity right here.
And we're back with our political roundtable this morning. Rich Lowry of the National Review and the Washington Post's Eugene Robinson, and Michelle Norris of NPR and NBC's Chuck Todd. You think I'd get that right? Welcome to all of you. So, Chuck, I will start with you. You just heard the debate between Speaker Gingrich and Senator Durbin. Not so sure that it was resolved. But as we look at this week, the same question I asked Speaker, what do we learn about President Obama's approach and the imprint he's trying to put on this national security debate?
Well, the difference in this debate was more tonal than it was on policy. Speaker Gingrich himself brought that up, and how that there's actually that President Obama seems to be moving closer to where President Bush was, at least in the last couple of years. And what I found interesting that wasn't brought up by either one of them is, you know, President Obama basically said, we're going to have a new Guantanamo. He didn't say it's going to be called, you know, he was making the case, and that's where these debates sometimes you wonder if, like, people out there watching going, why can't they just say, oh, we're going to have a prison, he called them prisoners of war.
Right.
Which was a very important phrase that I thought people didn't pick up on enough. The President of the United States said, we're going to have prisoners of war. We're at war. That's what these folks are.
We're going to hold them indefinitely.
And we're going to hold them indefinitely.
Where, though?
Well, and that's basically, we're just changing the name.
Right.
Of Guantanamo to something else and moving it someplace else.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
No, I would say, but I think there is more than changing the name, though, because what Obama said is we're going to do this legally. We're not just going to hold people indefinitely without specifying their status, without filing charges, just because we can and we think we need to. He said there is going to be some sort of process for determining who gets held and presumably for determining how long they get held, or at least when held.
But Rich, here's what interested me, and I got into it with Speaker Gingrich as well, which is I thought the president's argument this week boiled down in some ways to the idea that, yes, fear was a motivator after 9/11. Yes, there was a Chapter 1 on the war on terror, some of which I'm going to pick up and I'm going to continue. But for a policy to be sustainable, something you can really do over time, we have to make some changes. And that seems to be the crux of the disagreement.
Well, on the politics of fear, I don't have a problem with politics of fear when there's something actually to be fearful of. Earlier, late last year and earlier this year, both the Bush administration and the Obama administration embraced what you might call a politics of fear on the economy, because they thought we were on the precipice of a depression. And I think it's kind of a funny debate, because Obama has embraced the essentials of the Bush counterterrorism program. I think that program worked. I think it's wise of him to do that, and it reflects an admirable kind of flexibility and pragmatism. My problem with the speech was that Obama participated in this 2-, 3-, 4-year-long smear campaign defaming these tactics, now has changed his mind and won't come out honestly and explain that he has changed his mind and why.
Is it a case where he should have said, and should he in fact say, especially to his supporters on the left, this is why I changed my mind on some of these issues?
Well, they say that he has said that he's being deliberative, that he's hearing this out, that this is a careful sort of rendering of all of the arguments. To answer your earlier question, I just want to go back to something you said we learned about him this week. One thing that we learned is that he's not afraid of jumping in and taking on difficult issues and taking them on frontally. What was interesting to me is not just what he said, what was where he said it, and the date that he decided to deliver this speech. They decided to do this on Thursday of this week, knowing that Dick Cheney was going to be speaking at AEI. They could have done this Tuesday. They could have done this after the fact on Friday. They decided to do this on Wednesday.
They wanted
to basically
they wanted the
try to
contrast,
shut
and I
this
spoke
down.
to somebody in the White House who said, we like that contrast.
Well, not only that, well, because here's the problem. Dick Cheney's positions, when you take away Dick Cheney's name, are fairly I mean, the problem is the public is in between President Obama's positions and what he argued on Thursday and former Vice President Cheney's. What they knew was putting the Cheney brand on it made it a lot easier for them to win the initial political argument, and made it, because they were making a tough thing. Look, the White House on Thursday, after the speeches, they were like, boy, this wasn't a home run. We know it wasn't a home run because it wasn't going to be easy because of the fact that Cheney's positions are popular.
Well, and Gene, here's the point, which is, and this, I think, Vice President said it, you can't compromise on these matters. There is a pragmatism in the leadership of President Obama on all sorts of issues. Can you really bring that same kind of pragmatism to the issue of the war on terror?
Well, pragmatism, yes. Compromise, no, in the sense that either you torture or you don't. I mean, either you're going to waterboard people or you're not. And Obama says we're not going to waterboard people. He says it was a mistake to have done so in the past. That's an aspect of the Bush-Cheney program, among others, that he rejects, even the late Bush Cheney program. So, so compromise, I think, is indeed the wrong framework. But pragmatism is doing what works, and Obama says that what works is not the Bush-Cheney technique of take no prisoners, essentially, or take every prisoner.
Rich, the politics of national security, Republicans I talked to said, oh yeah, there was a rallying cry from Dick Cheney this week. It was an argument to conservatives and to Republicans, hey, this is where you should oppose this president, because both on politics and on substance, on policy grounds, you've got a real legitimate fight here.
That's exactly right. I talked to a Republican strategist last week who said, look, would we prefer to have someone with 70% approval out there making this case? Yes. But where is that person with 70% approval? He's not, evident. And I think
the White House, actually.
And I think well, yeah, that's 60%. So exactly. But in terms of the politics of this, no one's going to vote in November 2010 in their congressional or Senate races based on what Dick Cheney is saying right now. And I think what's motivating Cheney is a sense of honor. His administration has been accused of war crimes. Someone has to go out there in a high-profile way and defend it. And Condi Rice and Steve Hadley and all the rest of them apparently are hiding under their desks.
What about President Bush, former President Bush?
Well, he has a very strong belief that it's not his role as the former president to be sniping at the current occupant.
But Rich, some of those people, though, that you say are hiding under their desks also evolved in the course of that 8-year administration. I mean, they were not at the place that they were at the end of 8 years, that they were at the beginning of 8 years. And so it seems unrealistic to almost expect that they would come forward and carry this water, because they basically weren't there by the end of the administration.
In 2002 and 2003, the top echelons of the Bush administration, all these folks were in favor of these things. Now, what happened over time is that the threat seemed to fade a little bit, and we knew more about al-Qaeda, and the legal environment changed with the McCain Amendment and the rest of it. So there was an evolution, but at the beginning, when we thought we were going to get hit again, and we had these high-value guys who might have had information about ongoing plots, everyone wanted to push right up against the line.
There were other folks who were in line with the Bush-Cheney agenda at that time, Democrats. And that gets to the issue of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who claims, actually, that that was not the case, that she knew that they were asking for legal authority for waterboarding, but hadn't actually done it. But what is clear is there were no prominent Democrats at the time publicly saying, why don't we stop this? We're going down a real dark corridor here. What happens to Speaker Pelosi?
I think we're still in a dark corridor on this. It's very difficult to try to ascertain what actually happened inside that room for all kinds of reasons, and it's clear that people who went through these briefings have different interpretations, not just the briefing that Nancy Pelosi was involved in, but former Senator Graham and Senator Shelby have very different interpretations of the briefings that they went through, and it's difficult to try to get a handle on this because the people who are actually going through looking at these documents, they leave with different interpretations. It's hard for Nancy Pelosi to defend herself because she has to sort of talk around what happened inside that room. These are classified meetings. She can't actually talk about what happened inside them without breaking the rules.
Well, but she certainly doesn't have a problem, Chuck, with going out and saying the CIA uniformly misleads Congress.
Well, you know, don't forget, she's got to protect her own left flank. I mean, what she was fearful of at the beginning, when when that OLC memo that came out, and we're reading these things.
Office of Legal Counsel.
My apologies for using the initials there. Too much time at the White House, right? You remember seeing it. Wow, Colin Powell was briefed. You know, you started seeing all of these people that had been critics of waterboarding had been briefed at that time, and then you realize that Speaker Pelosi at the time, who was on the Intelligence Committee, and so she couldn't sit there and say, you know, so I think it was Martin Frost, a former member of Congress, wrote this, you know, what if everybody's telling the truth, where everybody heard what they thought they wanted to hear? You know, and the CIA did, you know, maybe they weren't direct in what they were saying, but they were basically going wink and a nod, read between the lines. This is what's probably going to happen. We wanted to give you guys a heads up. And maybe there is where there was this miscommunication. But for her politically right now, look, no Democrats calling for her to go down. What's happened for her, I think, is she has no more margin of error. If something else happens, this John Murtha scandal, this Democratic congressman, if something else comes up and bites her, she could be in trouble.
You know, going to the differing recollections, the Russians have a saying that no one lies like an eyewitness. Just because given human fallibility, everyone's going to have a different recollection, and your memory plays tricks on you, and it usually plays tricks on you that you want it to play. You know, it goes the way you want it to. I think she's clearly wounded. That press conference Friday where you had Majority Leader Steny Hoyer trying to pull her away from the podium when a CIA question came up, that was really cringe-making. But I think beyond the politics, beyond the gotcha aspect of this, the real substantive import of this entire controversy is, I believe very strongly, Nancy Pelosi, a liberal Democrat, has pretty impressive human rights credentials. If she had been told we were using methods that were clearly, inarguably torturous, we're pulling out fingernails, we're burning people with cigarettes, she would have raised holy hell. And that she didn't raise that kind of fuss over waterboarding tells us that it at the worst exists in a murky area and is not on par with those sort of clearly torturous methods.
And as Speaker Gingrich says, that maybe the policy was vindicated if she did not do that.
Well, first, I don't think I would agree, actually, that waterboarding is in some sort of gray area. I mean, our government has prosecuted it as a war crime in the past, and so it is generally considered to be torture. And I'm also not sure that I agree that she's in such terrible political danger. People underestimate Nancy Pelosi sometimes as a politician, and remember, she is Tommy D'Alessandro's daughter, the former political boss of Baltimore. That's the way she plays.
All right, I want to look forward a little bit to where Memorial Day is upon us, the beginning of summer, and where the Obama agenda goes from here. The big one, Michelle, is the Supreme Court nominee. You heard Senator Durbin. We could get it. He thinks we're going to get it this week as early as Tuesday. Steve Scully from C-SPAN did a very interesting interview with the president, which aired this weekend. And again, this is what the president had to say about what he's looking for in a nominee.
I think it's also important that this is somebody who has common sense and somebody who has a sense of how American society works and how the American people live. I said earlier that I thought empathy was an important quality, and I continue to believe that. You have to have not only the intellect to be able to effectively apply the law to cases before you, but you have to be able to stand in somebody else's shoes and see through their eyes and get a sense of how the law might work or not work in practical day-to-day living.
So that's one priority. Demographics, diversity, another. Here are some of the top picks who are women. Judge Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, the current Solicitor General, Diane Wood, who serves on the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago, Jennifer Granholm, Governor of Michigan, Janet Napolitano, who is Homeland Security Secretary. Where is he going?
You know, there are a couple things here. One, the White House has said repeatedly, if you talk to people inside the White House, that this so-called short list is not fully inclusive, that the president is considering people that aren't on that list. What's interesting when you listen to the president talk about his vision of the law, it is very different than the current majority on the court. When people seized on this term empathy and wondered what it really meant, it seems that he sees the law as something that is dynamic, that changes over time. One of the criticisms that we saw that he had of Chief Justice Roberts is that it's more of a static view of the law. The law is written in stone. It's more of a conservative view. He sees it, it's almost as if they see the law as a river, something that flows through people's lives, from the courtroom into the classroom, into the boardroom, through field and factory, past the kitchen table, and that the Constitution, this magnificent document, was written 200 years ago. And what he seems to be saying is that you need to consider how the terrain of this country has changed, because that will determine the ebb and the flow of this sort of dynamic force. And so he's looking, what they say is that they're looking for someone who has intellectual heft. And, you know, the law is 95% of it, but there's this other 5%. And that 5% goes to experience.
And that subjectivity, Chuck, is no doubt going to be grounds for a pretty hearty round of questioning for whoever the president chooses then, if there's that much leeway.
Well, and not to jump ahead to a subject matter that I know we're about to take on, but I think this first pick and the timing of it, I don't know if they want a big political fight over their Supreme Court. I think when they nominate somebody, and for instance, the timing of this thing, why do it this coming week? Congress isn't here, right? It's not easy for us to go find senators to start the media's confirmation process. So that's number one. Two, I think he wants somebody that can get confirmed with 70 to 75 votes. Would he like to make a political statement, you know, with on the demographic front, particularly with Hispanic? I think they would if they can't find the perfect candidate that can make this an easy process so they can tackle health care, which is the real fight of the summer and the real debate that they want to get done. Then I have a feeling we may see somebody, even though we said don't look on the circuit, we may see somebody who's a current judge, maybe a Diane Wood.
One thing that's clear when you talk to them, they are confident that they're going to get more than one bite at this apple also.
Right. Rich, speak to the health care debate, because it's important. Where is a bipartisan solution that emerges this year? What does it look like?
I don't know. You know, it's everyone thinks something inevitably is going to pass, which is exactly what everyone in Washington thought in 1993 when the Clintons took this on. But you talk to Republicans in Congress, and they're very frustrated at the fact that the industry groups are not there for them the way they were in 93 and 94. And that's driven mostly by that sense of inevitability. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling dynamic here. But Republicans are going to try to make the case that things that people are really worried about, the portability, not being able to keep their health care if they lose their job, cost, can be addressed by all sorts of measures short of this massive intervention.
What is interesting as well, the Wall Street Journal pointed out this week, that the president is leaving a lot of the details for how the reform is structured to Congress.
He is. This seems to be his MO, the way he wants to tackle these huge issues. You know, there's a difference from another big difference from '93 though, and I think it's that there is more of a consensus in the business community, which generally opposed health care reform in '93, that in fact it's time for reform, that something needs to be done, that the businesses are realizing that our current system, which imposes all of these costs on business essentially, or the lion's share of them, makes them less competitive, creates all sorts of problems. You know, GM is essentially a health insurance company that makes a few cars. And that changes the dynamic, and that's partly responsible for the weak response Republicans are getting.
Before we go, great image of the week, and we're going to show it to you. The Naval Academy graduation, the president spoke, and there he is, John McCain IV, John McCain's son, with an embrace for the commander-in-chief, the man who defeated his father there at graduation ceremonies this week. Chuck, certainly an interesting political moment to see.
It was, and it's what's remarkable, it's over a 103-year period, the Naval Academy has graduated somebody named John McCain 4 different times. I mean, forget what and that is a remarkable public service achievement, no matter where you fall on the political spectrum.
Rich, before I let you go, the issue of Colin Powell in the Republican Party. Speaker Gingrich seemed to, on this program at least, Republicans we're talking to are saying, no, let's get away from this idea of the fact that Powell is not part of the party. It seems to be a move toward more inclusion now.
Well, it's such a, this is something where I disagree with Dick Cheney on. I think he fell into a false choice with that question. You know, who do you take, Limbaugh or Colin Powell? You need both, obviously. And Republicans say it's a center-right country. It means you need a right and a center in your party.
All right, we have to leave it there. Thank you all very much. I'll be right back with some final thoughts on this Memorial Day weekend after this.
Meet the Press is sponsored by GE, Imagination at Work.
Hey, Pete.
Hey, Bob. What's up?
Oh, I just talked to someone at Fidelity about saving for my kids' college.
Huh. What's this?
Well, that's how I'm going to get there. It's guidance.
Oh, so maybe I should follow it, too.
No, it doesn't work that way, Pete. You see, this is my own personalized plan. You got to get one that's right for you.
Okay, but I can still walk along it while we talk, right?
Yeah, come on.
Whatever your destination, Fidelity has the people, guidance, and investments to help you find your way. Fidelity Investments. Turn here.
People we rely on in the morning can rely on Dulcolax laxative tablets overnight. So when people are counting on you, count on Dulcolax laxative tablets the night before. They give you predictable overnight relief to help get you feeling like yourself again in the morning. And they're gentle on your stomach because they're comfort-coated. No wonder people who need to be somewhere in the morning take Dulcolax laxative tablets the night before. Dulcolax laxative tablets. Keep you moving.
He volunteered.
We were drafted.
She enlisted. And off we went to Asia, to Europe.
The Gulf.
To do our duty.
Serve our country. We were buddies.
Shipmates. Best of friends.
I'll never forget his courage.
Her dedication.
The way he made you laugh. And I'll remember him.
Remember her?
I'll remember them.
Always.
This week, Designing Woman, Donna Karen, setting new trends in the fight against cancer.
Hospitals are loving the aromatherapy.
Helping both patients and doctors.
I was a bit skeptical at first myself.
What's her secret? This week on NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
To see how they like the taste of Kraft Ranch.
That's good stuff.
Uh-huh. See? People in Hidden Valley love Kraft Ranch.
This is Hidden Valley Golf Course.
Yeah, exactly.
Finally, a Memorial Day story. This week I flew home from San Diego after a couple of days off with my family. Shortly before landing in Washington, the captain informed us we were in special company on the flight. A Marine casualty officer was on board to escort the body of a fellow Marine en route to Arlington National Cemetery. 27-year-old Captain Jessica Conkling of Center County, Pennsylvania, died May 5th when her Cobra helicopter crashed during a nighttime training exercise. Having returned from service in Japan, Captain Conkling was preparing for another deployment. The captain of our United Airlines flight encouraged all of us to take a moment and reflect on the sacrifice so many young men and women have made for the cause of defending America. As I sat in silence with my fellow passengers, I felt honored to make that emotional connection with those serving in harm's way, something we may not do enough. On this Memorial Day weekend, we honor the ultimate sacrifice made by so many of our troops, and we offer the family of Captain Conkling and other families of the fallen our profound thanks. And we'll be right back.
$25,000 mornings, give or take, is all we humans get. We spend them on treadmills, we spend them in traffic, and if we get lucky, really lucky, it dawns on us to go spend them in a world where a simple sunrise can still be magic. 25,000 mornings. Make sure some of them are pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
Everybody's talking about the economic tsunami. What does that mean to a surfing CEO?
Tsunami in surfing is sort of a thrilling prospect, but the tsunami in business is kind of terrifying, and you have to watch the management of your assets very carefully. You know, you have to do things at the speed of light these days to stay ahead of the wolf pack.
Right.
And without technology, we would be nowhere. It helps you to still rip it up.
Turning off lights, recycling your trash. It's what we do every day that makes a difference. So green your routine. It's really easy.
That's all for today. We'll be back next week with a special conversation from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange with 3 key business leaders of Google, Caterpillar, and Xerox. That's coming up next week. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
To a local walk-in DTB help center. Head to KATU.com for more information. K2 on your side.
Beaverton Motorcycles across 217 from Washington Square.